Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Now, tell them how to pronounce your last name and your first name.
Rosa Goldenson.
See, there we go. Rosa Goldenson is a graduate student at CUNY. The dean, Sarah Bartlett, says she's absolutely fabulous, and she really, for those of you who remember Dennis Duggan, and I know many people in the room do, really has that spirit about exploring what the people of New York City are doing, thinking what's happening to them, and I mean, sort of not celebrity news crap. And so we are honoring her as an outstanding young journalist. And I know she's writing and has been writing some scoops for DNA Info as a student. I'm hoping that she keeps doing it, but we can get a bidding war going on here and raise her salary. Wait a minute, did I lose it? She's the one who gets the check. Oh, here it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
If you're wondering, it's for $1,000. This is the Dennis Duggan Memorial Prize awarded to Rosa Goldenson, Graduate School of Journalism, City University of New York, whose outstanding reporting, dedication to the public good, integrity, and constant curiosity reflect the spirit of Dennis Duggan.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Very honored. Alan Dodds-Frank of the Silurians. I'm really proud. And to CUNY, I'm very proud to be a part of such a fine institution. Steve Strasser, Melanie Lefkowitz, my craft teachers, teaching me the nuts and bolts, Jerry Hester, Sarah Bartlett, Debbie Stead, Tim Harper, Jeremy Kaplan, Steve Doherty, Steve Shepard, Judy Watson, Fred Kaufman. To the folks at DNA, Nicole Bodie, Michael Ventura, thank you so much for publishing me, giving me these opportunities, and teaching me so much. I'm learning a lot with you. A couple of the folks here tonight happen to have helped me already along my way. David Hanshaw, I met you on my first craft daybook assignment. He has a great Instagram. You should follow him. And Michael Howard Saul, I emailed you the other day for the budget citations on the rent subsidies, and you sent them right back to me. I just said, I'm a CUNY J School student. Where was that in the budget? And you sent me all the citations. So I'm very proud to be part of a club that will have me as a member. My dad, my mom, my sister, everybody, thank you so much. It's really special and kind of strange to receive an honor at the beginning of your career before you've actually done very much. So I'm going to interpret this as a promise to honor the work that all of you do and Dennis Duggan, and keep it up. Thank you.
It's a pleasure and honor to introduce Jim Fitzgerald. He is, in this modern digital social media age, a genuine news reporter, the kind that many of us here tonight aspired to be, many of whom made the grade. Jim, don't call him James, once considered training for the priesthood, but then he heard a higher calling. Thank you. Read all about it in a superb profile in the Silurian News. I work with Jim. He is the AP man in White Plains. I am a U.S. Attorney's press officer in the same town. Here is a small example of Jim's dedication to his work. We had an important trial starting. Narcy Novak and her brother were charged with killing her husband, Ben Novak Jr., an heir to the Fontainebleau hotel fortune in Miami Beach, and his mother. Jim asked me to get payphones hooked up in the courthouse because cell phones were not allowed. Reporters needed to call updates. I tried to get the phones, and I failed. The trial opened with payphones on the hallway wall. I ran into Jim on the phone. He waved and smiled. Please welcome our 2014 winner of the coveted Peter Kihss Award, Jim Fitzgerald. Thank you.
Look at that.
It's my honor to present this to Jim. It's in the spirit of, for those of you who did not know Peter Kihss, he was famous for helping young reporters and without asking for anything in return. So this says, in keeping with the painstaking reporting and generous sharing of knowledge by Peter Kihss, Jim Fitzgerald of the Associated Press is honored with this award for his outstanding contributions as a reporter, writer, and editor, who unstintingly and selflessly has helped generations of journalists inform the public with clarity, honesty, and dedication. By the way, I might say, it sounds like in the back of the room we have a future candidate, right?
Yes, it does.
Who's helped our immediate winner.
Thank you so much.
Congrats.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks very much. As Anne Boleyn said as she approached her executioner, I'll be short. When I got the call about this award, I, of course, went right to my wife, Ellen, to brag about it. She's an accomplished woman, a veteran of the battle for women's rights in the 60s and 70s. She went right to the Silurian website and noticed that it said it had its start as, quote, a sacrosanct men's club, unquote. She also mentioned that the award is named for a man. And she said, have they ever given this to a woman? I said, but of course, just last year. Last year's winner was Joanne Wasserman, the first woman to win the award. Well, okay then, she said. Sounds like my kind of outfit. So congratulations again to Joanne, my predecessor and pioneer, and congrats to everybody who won tonight. It sounds like a very impressive list of work. As a way of letting you know how much this means to me, I'd like to tell you about my first day at the Associated Press. It was Memorial Day, 1971. I learned right away I would be working holidays. I was 20 years old. I was living in the Bronx with my parents and brothers and sisters, commuting to Manhattan College. I had somehow landed a summer relief job on AP's old radio desk, writing broadcast summaries. So I took the number 6, which we used to call the IRT, down to 51st Street and walked west toward Rockefeller Center. You know what the streets of New York are like at 6:45 a.m. on Memorial Day. I barely saw another person. There were empty cabs on Park Avenue. There were undisturbed pigeons on the steps of St. Patrick's. Even the lobby at 50 Rock was kind of hushed. I was quite early. But when the elevator doors opened on the 4th floor, the cacophony that journalism was in those days hit me like an ocean wave. Editors were yelling at copy boys. Reporters were screaming on the phone. The wire machines, and we had lots of wire machines at the AP, were clacking out the news at 66 words a minute. I heard loud swearing from what turned out to be a never-ending card game in the lunchroom. It sounded like heaven. I got goosebumps. And I thought, I've made it to the big time. And tonight with this award, you've made me feel the same way. Thank you. By the way, in that lobby at 50 Rock was a plaque commemorating the founding of the AP in the 19th century. The plaque wasn't placed there by the AP. It was placed there by the Silurians. I didn't know what the Silurian was at the time, but I've since learned, and as you've heard tonight, a Silurian is a veteran of the New York journalism scene with an appreciation of tradition and history and a mission to recognize excellent work and to bail out colleagues in trouble. It's a great legacy. I love how the website puts it. We come out of the vanished heyday of New York newspapers. Now, I learned much later, when I mentioned this award to my daughters, that Silurians are also a race of lizard-like aliens on Doctor Who. I don't see any of them here tonight, I don't think. The Silurian tradition deepens the honor of this award. When I looked at the list of previous winners, I was humbled. It's an all-star roster in an all-star town. I'm happy to say I count a few of them as friends, including Joe Berger, who's here tonight. And like probably every other journalist in New York, I count many of them as influences. I think of Robert McFadden's writerly leads in the Times, and I was privileged to meet Bob tonight. I think of Pablo Guzman's reach into the other New York. And I think of Pete Hamill. Well, Pete Hamill does everything well. Being on that list, going forward, will always be precious to me. And of course, the award is named for Peter Kihss, and that is the greatest compliment of all. When Kihss died, Sidney Schanberg wrote, "For all his professional gifts, I think the most special of his qualities for younger journalists was that you could go to him. He was a master craftsman who never shooed away a colleague seeking help. His calm under pressure was also legendary." Kihss was an early winner of the Silurians Lifetime Achievement Award, which is even more prestigious than this one. Walter Cronkite's on that list. Red Smith, Lou Bacardi, Mike Wallace, and my friend Irene Cornell. Hamill's on that list too, of course. I'd like to thank a few people who were influential in my career. You haven't heard of most of them, especially the people who work at the AP. There's a certain anonymity that goes with working at AP, especially for the editors. I spent the first half of my career as an editor, and when I first became a reporter, I thought, well, at least now I'm going to get some bylines. I got lots of bylines on the wire. They tend to disappear in the newspapers around the country. But there are times that this disappearing byline can be a blessing. In 2005, I was covering the trial of a man who was accused of stealing the fees that should have gone to celebrities who were giving speeches. James Earl Jones came to testify, Nikki Giovanni, Erin Brockovich. When Magic Johnson showed up, he took the witness stand to be sworn in, and I couldn't help noticing that he towered over the federal judge, Colleen McMahon. I wanted to mention the contrast in my story, so I called the judge's chambers to ask how tall she was. Even after I explained that I just wanted a little color in the story, I was told the judge does not give out personal information. So I took a guess. I made an informed estimate. I mentioned that Magic was 6'9", and that the judge was about 5'5". My story appeared the next day in one of the New York tabs. No byline, no AP credit, nothing unusual. But when I walked into the courtroom, the judge was ranting to a clerk, just theming. How could the Post possibly write that I'm 5'5"? I'm 5'6". I never told her it was an AP story. Andy Rooney was among the victims of that scam as well. When the clerk swore him in, she said, "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" And Rooney says, "I don't know about the God part, but yeah." And the judge had to interrupt him, not once but twice, to remind him that it's the lawyer, not the witness, who asks the questions, even if the witness is a journalist. So, again, bear with me while I thank just a few people. I'm not getting this chance again anytime soon. My father, Jerry Fitzgerald, was a PR guy on Wall Street who had a way with words and a way of making his children appreciate them. If he learned a new word or a new phrase, or he saw a sentence he liked in a book or a newspaper, he shared it. He had a 1948 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and he showed us how fascinating it could be. Once in the 70s, I wrote an op-ed piece about the Yankees, how strange it was to see the Yankees playing at Shea Stadium. When the Times accepted it, I was euphoric. I showed it to Dad. He had suggestions. I remember that he thought arena was not a good word to describe a ballpark. He was right, too, but I know what I said to him. I said, "Dad, it's already been accepted by the Times." My mother went to college and won high honors after she raised her 7 children. She filled us with wonderful values. And I'm happy to say I am close, loving friends with each of my 6 brothers and sisters, and that our relationship gets closer every day. My English teacher in the junior year of high school was an unassuming man named Mark Toomey, who I thought looked like Ichabod Crane in the Sleepy Hollow stories. He instilled in me a love of literature and journalism while teaching us about the British writers, great British writers. I've never been able to convince him that he was an extraordinary teacher. At Manhattan College, Brother Francis Bowers was the Dean of Arts. Harry Blair taught Shakespeare, and Howard Flown taught Faulkner and Hemingway and Fitzgerald. No relation to F. Scott Fitzgerald, by the way. At AP, Charlie Manzella was my first supervisor, and he helped me learn on the job what real professional news writing was. He's now as much a friend as a mentor. I should mention some of the great reporters, writers, and rewriters I met at AP. I'll limit it to the ones who showed me how it's done and how it's shared, which is relevant to this award. It's no coincidence that this list includes some of my best friends. Brian O'Hanlon, Jack Stokes, Mike Silverman, the late Marty Sutphin, the late Bureau Chief Sam Boyle, Rick Hampson, Larry McShane, Jerry Schwartz, Kylie Armstrong, Ray Pike. They know who they are. I also want to thank Bruce Golding, who at the time was with the Journal News and is now with the Post, for his invaluable assistance with the court beat in White Plains many years ago when it was all new to me. He should get an award for helping older reporters. And I want to especially thank Herb Haddad of the Silurians, who is to me the most important man in the White Plains courts and has become a great friend. I want to thank my current editors for being here tonight. It means a lot to me. New York City news editor Amanda Barrett and state editor James Martinez are here. I mentioned my wife, also known as Ellen Nimmons, assistant international editor of the Associated Press, and the greatest thing that ever happened to me. One day in 1978, she transferred in from the Boston Bureau. I walked in with long blonde hair and a bright red poncho. We've been married almost 32 years. We have 2 daughters in their 20s, Bridget and Caitlin, both currently living in San Francisco. They light up our lives from afar. I should mention Steve Dermody. I spent several years at the start of my career on the overnight shifts at AP, midnight to 8, 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. Dermody had been on the shift so long that they held his retirement party at 8:45 a.m. It was at some secret basement dive in the West 20s, as I recall. Windows were blacked out. There was some drinking, and it must have been strange for the office workers on their lunch breaks to see us stumble out onto the sidewalk, blinking into the afternoon sun. Now, this award is for being helpful to younger reporters, at least in part. I think partly because I've gotten to the age where all the reporters are younger reporters. But I also have to say that the younger reporters have often been helpful to me, especially the first week I had a smartphone. They knew things I didn't know, and they weren't afraid to teach me, and I appreciated it. But I think you'll agree, as I've seen from the start of my career, that journalists, at least the journalists who are involved in the daily grind, are a collegial bunch. When 3 pens go bad during a news conference in the rain, or when you need a ride to the candidate's next stop, or when you just have no idea what the judge meant in that ruling from the bench, it seems there's always a newsman or a newswoman around willing to help. The writer George Saunders has a skinny book out. It's skinny because it's just his commencement speech from last year at Syracuse. It's a plea for people to simply be kind, to err in the direction of kindness, as he puts it. And what is the collegiality of journalists except a form of kindness? It's even easier. It's just being kind to the people you know. I think we all know life is more fun that way. My career had 2 phases. When I was an editor, The reporters I dealt with, of course, were AP reporters. When I became a reporter, the reporters I dealt with were the competition. It didn't really make a lot of difference in the relationship. We're not talking about sharing exclusives. I don't do that, and nobody I know does that. But I always felt it was part of being the AP guy that you could share an insight or a quote or some background knowledge to help others get the story right. I hope my bosses back there don't disagree. Back in 1999, there was a very strange trial in the federal court in White Plains in which a group of parents were suing the Board of Education in Bedford. I'm going to oversimplify, but they seem to feel that some of the new agey activities that were going on in the schools were fostering Satanism and were violating their freedom of religion. There was a lot of wacky testimony about interspecies communication and the Earth Mother, and whether if you take a class in yoga, you're actually practicing Buddhism. At one point, the tooth fairy was mentioned. The judge was the late Charles Bryant, and he was having his fill. And at one point, when the yoga master said on the stand that he was also a psychic, the judge turned to him and said he had just one question. He said, "Could the psychic please tell me when this trial will be over?" Your trial is over because I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Jim, you should know that there is another Lifetime Achievement Award winner here who once worked for the AP even before you did, named Seymour Topping, before he, as they would say in Variety, before he ankled over to the Times. Be there. So I want to thank everybody for coming and making this a great record-setting awards dinner, and remind you once again, June 19th, Jerry Baker, noon, right here.